Sometimes we choose our own path.
This is what I love to do.
Other times, the path chooses us.
I said, I think I'm having a heart attack.
This week on Open Record, a Tough Mudder's finish line turns into a flat line.
I could have been gone.
But that was only the beginning.
So it is a small cart setup, very small space.
Of his second chance.
I said, if I get a chance, I'll come back and build this, help build it with you.
To make a cardiac connection. From the FOX6 studios, this is Open Record. I am Brian Polson, and I'm joined by Open Record's executive producer, Sarah Smith. Hey, Sarah.
Hello.
And we are joined this week by FOX6's Sam Kramer. Welcome back to the podcast, Sam.
It's always an honor, you guys. Thanks for having me.
And we'll love having you on. We are doing this one. We're recording these. I'm trying to say all this. I'm shuffling papers. Start that over again.
No,
we are recording this episode on Wednesday, May 8th, for release on Thursday, May 9th. Do two things at the same time, right? Like walk and chew gum and try to shuffle papers and say things.
Yeah.
This week, we're going to talk about a terrifying journey that awaits hundreds of thousands of people in the United States every year. And hopefully the lucky ones surviving and recovering from a heart attack. But this story is about what happened next for one man that will help others in the Milwaukee area for years to come. We're going to talk about that right after this. So, Sam, you reported this week on a West Bend man. I say you did report. The story will actually air. We're recording this on a Wednesday. It will air tonight. By the time this podcast is released, the story will be out. But a West Bend man who had a heart attack that led him down kind of a serendipitous path here that will help others for years to come. We're going to talk about that later on. But first, just let's talk about Greg Knig and a little bit about his experience.
Yeah, so he's kind of your kind of typical West Bend guy. He works a job. He's a carpenter by trade, but he doesn't just focus on the work. He likes to do a lot of stuff outside of work. Take walks with his dog. He plays volleyball. He's super active. He hunts as well. So somebody who loves to be active, loves to do things outside of work, and really enjoy the outdoors. And somebody who signs up for a Tough Mudder here to just prove to himself that, hey, I can do this. I'm an athlete.
I have to point out you're talking to a couple of Tough Mudder veterans here.
That's what I thought.
We did
Don't
Tough
get it
Mudder
twisted.
as a FOX6 team.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we did it well.
That's true also.
But I mean, the Tough Mudder is not it's not light work.
No.
It's 13 miles, first of all, so it's like half marathon distance.
I was
But
told
then
it would
there's-
not be that hard.
Yeah, and then there's all these obstacles.
Yeah.
You're climbing over walls and you're crawling through mud. And then the thing that really stands out to me most was the electrical shocks. There were two different, if I recall, two different places on the course where there were like electrical wires that would zap you if you, and so, I mean, it can be a little stress inducing to say the least.
right.
Fun,
Yeah.
teamwork.
And it requires teamwork, correct? I
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
There are obstacles there that you cannot
You
pass
can't
by
do
yourself.
you're hoisting.
And it was great as a FOX6 team building thing. We did this, and I think it was kind of a great exercise because you are helping each other out. And there's things that you think I don't think any of us think of ourselves as these Olympic athletes or anything like that. But you're doing these things that otherwise seem crazy, going up these huge walls or whatever it is, and helping each other out. And at the end, there's just that great feeling of camaraderie. that we did, right.
Yeah, and so he signs up for this with some friends from work. They're a little bit younger than he is, and again, he acknowledges that it's 10K. It's probably going to be challenging. He thought it was probably going to be challenging, but that he'd be able to do it. But as he gets going, he feels this tightness in his chest, and he's chalking it up. Maybe I'm just not in as good a shape as I thought.
He was
I was.
feeling that on the course.
On the
Okay.
course,
Yeah.
All right.
maybe about 2 to 3 miles in is what he said.
And he's there with a group of guys, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
group of guys, mostly younger than him. And it's just like, okay, well, I'm here. I think I can just pull it out, and this is just kind of an inconvenience of my own planning, so to speak. That beyond that chest tightness, he says he's struggling a little bit to breathe. So again, it's kind of that line. Is it just out of shape, or is it something else?
And sometimes like anxiety too. Like I think about, okay, if I know I have to run a certain distance and I have to do these physical things, I might feel short of breath or, try to catch my breath as it may be. So, right. To your point of like, okay, is this something more serious or is it just the nerves of the day?
Well, and you're in the middle of this thing that is supposed to be taxing on your
Yes.
body. So maybe you go, well, it's just, maybe I'm going to feel that way. I'll feel better at the end. And I've seen your story. You have photos of him at the end.
Yeah.
There he is. He's holding a beer in his hand. They're
Yeah.
celebrating.
They're
right?
smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and you can tell that they're happy that they did it. They accomplished it together. They accomplished this goal that they set out to achieve. But again, he's still feeling off. He's hoping that maybe the beer could calm down, or once the race is done, you kind of feel that rush of adrenaline.
Beer always makes things better. Right?
Sure.
No, okay. So,
Absolutely.
But he's feeling like, okay, when I calm down, I'm gonna. This is all gonna, the tightness, whatever it is, gonna go away.
Yeah, that was at least his hope. So later that day, it was a Saturday in May, coming up on a year now, and he says it was actually the night of his son's prom. So he was hoping to get out of there, take the pictures, have the beer, get out of there, and get there for photos. Obviously, a seminal moment. And he says he kind of has this fork in the road that he chalks it up to maybe what most men would have. Do I just ride this out, go sit at home on the couch, and just chalk it up to being out of shape? Or do I turn around, there's a medical tent about 75 yards back, and say, hey, I just don't know. He says that they make you walk through the merchandise tent to get out of at least this particular site in Slinger. He decides to double back after he feels this kind of moment of panic. He actually kind of went down to a knee and was like, okay, what's going on?
What a decision, though, because based on what we know now, how things might have gone had he not made that choice.
Got in the car.
There is no doubt the story could certainly have turned out a lot differently.
So what happens? He turns back.
Yeah,
what happens
goes to
then?
the medical tent.
He gets to the medical tent and he goes in there and says, hey, something is clearly off. I'm having this moment of panic. I'm having this chest tightness. I can hardly breathe. They're like, are you a spectator or are you a participant? He's like, I actually just finished the race. And he estimates he's in there about 5 to 7 minutes when the medical term is he codes.
Does he remember any of that?
He remembers a little bit of the conversation, but beyond that, no, it had to be told. He codes, meaning his heart stops for 2.5 minutes.
That's what it's one thing to say he goes in there, they say you're having a heart attack, we're gonna go check you out. His heart stopped. And 2.5 minutes,
if you sit still for 2.5 minutes, it might as well be an hour. It feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, I don't know at what time, how long your heart has to stop before you're typically not coming back from that.
Right.
But I always thought that's about the time. You don't have much more chance.
Certainly could be. I don't know that off the top of my head, but so if you're going to have a heart attack, it's about as good a place as you can, given the circumstances. They started CPR, and had the compressions going. They also had an AED that came. And so one of the interesting things was during the Tough Mudder, he said, the only obstacle I didn't really like was the electrocution, the shocking. Didn't like to be shocked. Well, he was shocked again right here.
Yeah.
And it ends up really kind of saving his life, at least for the first part, here in this medical tent.
Yeah. Wow.
So he doesn't remember that, though.
No.
Because he's then, I assume, rushed off to the hospital after this.
So
right?
he says coming to, he just remembers people being around him.
What, was he still at the Tough Mudder site when he came to? Okay.
And so there are the EMTs or whoever that are there. Some of the guys that he ran the race with still there, checking on him. And so that they get him into an ambulance, and then they go to Frederick Menominee Falls was the closest hospital where he actually gets a stent put in his right coronary artery to free up that blockage that was clearly he was unaware of.
So he's doing Tough Mudder with a blockage. He has no idea. Yeah. So now he's had this heart attack. He's in the hospital. What happens? Because we often hear about this. What happens after that? And that's really where this story kind of takes its next step, right?
Yes. So he obviously takes care of things in the hospital, but you cannot just walk out of the hospital and go back to life as you were when you have a heart attack. So he is enrolled into the intensive cardiac rehab program, which is at Frederick West Bend, which is where he lives. And it is intensive in a couple of ways from what we saw in telling this story. First off, you need to regain some of your physical activity. And he talks about his apprehension in doing that. Think about it. You just pushed your body to its absolute limits, and it responded in a way that clearly was like, maybe we shouldn't have done this.
You're worried about the fragility. Do I want to really push this again?
Exactly.
Right.
And so it looks in the space at the time at Frederick West Bend, and it's the first healthcare provider in the state to have this program. It's kind of metaphorically stuck in a closet a little bit. It's not really a closet, at least it wasn't. But it is, it's like part gym. There's a bunch of ellipticals, exercise bikes, treadmills right on top of each other. Because again, you kind of have to start over in a way, where they closely monitor your heart. I mean, they are there, they're looking at it and like, hey, slow down, or okay, let's test this. Let's see if we can sustain this, and do that part of it. Then there's this whole other aspect to this education as well, and that's dietary. Probably the harder part of the two, to be honest, especially here.
So is this, you said he was taken to Freighter Menominee Falls.
Yep.
And then this program is at Freighter West Bend. Was this done on an outpatient basis, or is this while he's in the hospital, he's transferred over? How does that work?
This is outpatient, so rehab clinic. So he told us he did 72 sessions, I believe it was 3 times a week, that he would go in there for about a couple hours. And again, it was almost kind of, the way he describes it is that it's split into like an hour here, on the physical side, hour on the dietary side, nutrition side, and just really kind of lift you up, get you, their goal is to get you back to who you were before. And, he tells the story of, hey, this happened in May. Well, later this fall, I already have a hunting trip, an elk hunting trip paid for in Colorado. If you know anything about that, it's rare to get that opportunity and it's expensive, and it's Colorado. So you're gonna be hiking at elevation.
Yeah.
That's very strenuous on the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, for him to come in with that goal, it's ambitious.
Yeah.
But it helps drive you
You have
through each of those
dedication,
72 sessions.
Yeah. What did he wasn't working at the time when he was going through all this therapy?
No,
and
yeah.
stuff,
So
was
so he was out of work
Yeah.
for a while, and then eventually comes back on kind of lighter duty. Isn't really back all the way, but is back in a sense to be able to at least do a little bit of something to gain a living.
So he goes through this cardiac rehab program, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, and then he's making these lifestyle changes, and he's patched up, got the stent in the heart, but it's not the last time he ended up at the Cardiac Rehab Center, and we're going to talk about that when we come right back. So we're talking about Greg Knig, weekend warrior, carpenter by trade. He has had a heart attack. He gets a stent. He's gone through these, what do you say, 72 sessions?
72
sessions of cardiac rehab. And you mentioned carpenter by trade. He's obviously looking for work. He gets, are these various jobs that come to him? Does he work for a company? Does he work by himself? Tell me about that.
He works for a company, I believe it's called Cullen, and he was actually, there was such a need for work that a different company came by to Cullen and said, hey, if you have anybody, there's this job that we need people for. And so it wasn't actually technically his company, it was somebody else, the name of which escapes me right now. But they say, hey, there's a job in West Bend. What do you think? And he's like, well, I live in West Bend. That's not far at all. Let's do it.
Perfect. Yeah.
And about a day or two in, he's like, it's at the hospital. And he's like, what am I going to be doing here? I'm kind of curious.
So he didn't know what
No.
he was being hired to do. Okay.
He had no idea. And this is interesting because he had established such a rapport, such a connection with the people that helped him get back to being Greg. And one of them is the dietitian, Sarah Bedford. And he told her, he said, someday I want to be able to come back here and help you kind of build this up to what it should be.
Because you said it was this sort of small, like almost like a closet kind of thing. Right?
Yes. So that's the physical side. The nutrition side, Sarah Bedford was cooking off of a single stovetop induction stove, placed on top of this cart that is no more than a high school desk in width.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how you're gonna?
Well, right. And one of the things that she said that kind of just you take for granted when you have a larger space is she's like, oh, I mean, now, whatever. But before, it's like if she needed an ingredient that she forgot, it was like, well, we got to traipse back up to where the pantry is or where we keep all the stuff, probably in bins somewhere. It's just not, the efficiency isn't there because you're confined to this little space to try to do things that are a little bit more larger scale.
She called it her Mary Poppins cart at times because she's
Yeah.
really pulling things out of
Right.
anywhere and everywhere. And
We're kind of slow playing the reveal here, but I think people have probably figured out by now he's hired to come work at Freighter West Bend and happens to be working on this very cardiac rehab unit, right?
and expanding the unit that brought him back to life, which is really special. He said he was going to do it. Probably didn't know that he was actually going to have a chance to do it, and there he does it. So to be honest, we walk into this story, and it's in February, which is American Heart Month, and our intent was probably to turn it a little bit quicker than May. But I walk out of there with our photographer Colin. I say, Colin, this is going to take a lot longer than that, because
You wanted to come back and see
how
the
can
results.
you not
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
back and see the entire
reveal.
story?
Right.
And so when we were there, he's building the kitchen that Sarah is now has the pleasure of working in, and HGTV would be proud.
Yeah.
It is
You were
a
talking beforehand.
full-
They've got the camera.
Yeah.
Above
They've got the
that looks
camera
down
above.
Like,
There are seats and tables for the patients to be able to take notes and see everything. I mean, that is such a huge diversion that these patients have to go through, as far as, okay, I can't eat as much sodium as I used to, and Lord only knows how much sodium we all intake. That's probably good advice for all of us. But there's such a change, such a lifestyle change that comes with fixing your diet for a medical reason like this. So it's hard, and it's a lot of education, not just in figuring out how to do it, but how it's going to fit into your life. So there's a classroom here. They can take notes. They can see everything. They get to try everything. And then they realize it's okay, maybe this doesn't taste as bad as I thought it would. And it's going to be easier to incorporate into your life.
What did you get from from Greg in terms of what this meant to him to be able to go and do this project after? I mean, this is the place, like you said, that saved his life, and now he's going back and doing a job to help so many other people who can get this sort of life-saving advice. How did he feel about that? What did he have to say?
He felt fortunate in a couple of ways. One, to be able to do it, right? But two, to be able to give back to something that has proven successful or provides results. And frankly, there is no better result than providing people the chance to get back to their life after their life, frankly, has ended for a minute or two, or in this case, 2.5. He took great pride in that. And I don't know if I can't say necessarily that it meant a lot for him to stick to his word, but the fact that he was able to is pretty cool.
The center itself and the rehab facilities, both the physical side and then the nutrition side, is that for anyone that's had a heart attack and is in some sort of rehab?
So yeah, it's as far as I understand, they come into this program after having a heart attack, and yeah, it's all right there at Frederick West Bend. It's now all on the same level in a different
As the
part of
cardiac unit.
hospital.
Yeah. Okay.
So you don't have to, and that was the other thing. Like when Sarah's cooking on this cart, she's going up and down and going wherever. There isn't really a dedicated space, which they managed with for years, but to see the value, to see the investment, I think kind of uplifts it.
And I don't know, and we're going to talk to Sarah about this. She may know better because she's going to join us in a little bit here. But do we know, do other hospitals have units like this? Is this becoming more and more common? Obviously, they're expanding their unit here, and Greg ends up working on that. Is this something that the medical community is recognizing has a lot of value when you've had someone who's experienced a heart attack?
So again, Frederick was the first to stand up a unit like this in Wisconsin, and it functions at 2 locations in West Bend, and I believe the other one is in Tosa. Sarah can fact check us on that in a little bit. But as far as the other ones, I'm not sure.
But obviously, this is something that they are seeing value in, because I know this as someone who has a spouse who works in the insurance industry. They're always looking for not only how do we make people healthier, but how do we keep people from coming back? Because obviously caring for someone after a heart attack is expensive. And so you not only do you want to keep people healthy and save lives, you want to try to prevent them from coming back and having another episode. Obviously, if you can do that through education, I imagine that's beneficial.
Oh, for sure. It's not just rehab care. It's preventative care. Really, in a way. And so, yeah, I think there's absolutely value, and certainly they see that to stand up this unit and also provided its own space. So, yeah, it's clearly a success there.
Well, we shouldn't hold off any longer. Why don't we bring the expert in? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to be visited by Sarah Bedford, who's a dietitian with Freighter West Bend, and we're going to talk all about what we've been talking about here, but get more from her right after this. So we've been talking all about this cardiac rehab unit at Freighter Hospital in West Bend, and joining us now on the podcast, Sarah Bedford, a registered dietitian, part of the cardiac rehab team at Freighter Hospital in West Bend. Sarah, thank you for joining us on Open Record.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us, first of all, how are the digs? They must be nice having this new space.
Oh, it's amazing. It was an easy transition, let me tell you. But yeah, I've been cooking now in my new space for about a month, and I almost forget what it was like to cook on my mobile kitchen for 4.5 years. It's awesome. I love it so much.
So tell us a little bit about before any of this. You were taking this cart around. Were you using this for people who are inpatient as well, or is this all outpatient? How does this work, and what are you doing?
Yeah, so my specific role is I'm the lead clinical dietitian for Freighter's intensive cardiac rehab program. So Freighter West Bend Hospital was the first hospital within Freighter's healthcare system to start the intensive cardiac rehab program. And then we also have what we term as ICR programs, that's short, at Freighter Menominee Falls and then main campus in Wauwatosa as well. And so what my role is here is to help guide patients about, the nutrition side of how nutrition affects their overall health, specifically with that cardiac focus. And then on top of it all, not only provide the education of how sodium can raise blood pressure, how saturated fat intake increases the plaque buildup. I not only get to talk about it, but I also get to show them how to walk the talk with what we call cooking schools here, which are those cooking demonstrations. And so previously I cooked on that mobile kitchen for 4.5 years. And as Sam was saying, it was a unique setup and you got used to it. And now I get to diversify what I do a little bit more outside of that stovetop.
So obviously when people are coming into the rehab part, they're there because they had a medical scare like Greg did, or something to that effect. So how do you and your team work to kind of get through to them, like the importance of, hey, you need to change something, both things, all the things, so that you're not back in here? How do you end up getting through to them? I mean, I know a health scare can be scary enough, and that might be enough to get them to make changes, but how do you get through to the patients?
So the benefits of this intensive cardiac rehab program is, yes, nutrition is one of the main categories that we look at, but there's actually 3 categories that we educate patients on, which is, the exercise component, not only watching their heart rate while they exercise, but providing workshops to discuss a little bit more in depth about how different types of exercise impact overall health and improve your cardiac function. And then we also have another category, which we term as healthy mindset. So that's stress management, understanding, taking a step back to realize that a significant health event happened. Sometimes that's step 1, to realize that, hey, this is going on and maybe we need to make lifestyle changes. And so this program is phenomenal because you can take all 3 crucial categories to lifestyle change and you can put them together, and each expert supports the other one. And so we just take time to listen to the patients. Sometimes some of our patients will meet with a healthy mindset expert one-on-one to get more of individual coping skills and techniques to whether or not it's their life event or other things happening in their life that's affecting them from making lifestyle changes. They get to talk to me one-on-one as well as sit in nutrition education classes so we can have an individual conversation about what it looks like to apply these cardiac nutrition guidelines to their life, and try to break down some of the barriers that they may or may not be having.
So I'm curious because you met Greg, you remember Greg from when he was there as a patient, right? And so was Greg like an A student? Is he like we knew he was going to take to this right away? I mean, what do you remember of Greg's time when he was there before he ever came along to build your new kitchen?
Yeah, so he was, yeah, what you would term an A student go-getter. I think because of his cardiac story being such, I remember sitting down and talking to him and I was like, wait, you had a cardiac arrest after a Tough Mudder? Like that's a huge wake-up call. And he has his family that he wants to support and be around. So he already had that first challenge of understanding why he needed to make lifestyle changes. Like that's the first step. And then from there, he's like, tell me what I got to do. Tell me how to make it work. And then I remember too sitting in on his one-on-one with his wife, and he's like, "So, I have that hunting trip in Colorado," and I was like, "Yep." He goes, "I'm gonna keep eating heart healthy on that hunting trip," which is just amazing. Like most people would take that week of a hunting trip as what we term as cheat weeks, not even care about lifestyle changes, just do whatever is easiest. And so like it was just amazing that he wanted to continue to eat heart healthy while camping, which is not an easy feat to do, especially the style of hunting that he was doing out there. We're talking, we researched what cooler would be best, down to, okay, you could probably batch make this food item, freeze it. It would last, help keep everything cold. You can make it on a stovetop over a campfire. So he just was such a go-getter, and he was just amazing to work with.
It makes me wonder when I think about Greg. You talk about the 2 units of the cardiac rehab team, which is you've got your exercise kind of side, and then you've got your dietary side. He just did a Tough Mudder. So it's not like you have to get through to him that, hey, exercise matters. Right. You should really consider exercise. I just did a Tough Mudder. That really probably raised the importance of diet for someone like Greg. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, he even would admit that diet and nutrition was his primary focus of, learning the education behind it and what he needed to do. The exercise portion was obviously important, making sure that his heart could, sustain his normal activity levels, both at work, working a physical job, and on that hunting trip that was a goal of his. But he would verbalize out loud that nutrition was his top priority.
Now, you guys know I'm a data person, and I
What?
love data. So I found from the Freighter website some statistics on this intensive cardiac rehab program where they documented after 3 weeks, they saw patients have a 9% decrease in blood pressure, 20% decrease in cholesterol, 40% decrease in chronic inflammation, and then 7 to 11 pounds of weight loss. It sounds like across the board, you're seeing a lot of success stories out of this. You're actually seeing it make a difference. It's not just that the ideas are there and the ideas are good. You're seeing people follow through.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Greg is one example, and it was amazing to see him a few months after graduating the program telling me like he had his cooler with him, and he's like, yep, there's still the heart healthy foods in this cooler, even working on construction sites. We just had somebody else stop in to see the new space to check it out, and they printed their labs from my chart, and they're like, take a look at my cholesterol levels. Like, I can't believe it. Like, it's one thing to hear it, you talk about it, and everybody else talk about how your numbers can improve, but then at your next appointment seeing it, it's just amazing. We actually just got done, one of our graduates was on I might not tell the full story perfectly, but he was on the heart transplant list. And so he was in our program with congestive heart failure, just trying to work up that ejection fraction, which is the efficiency that your heart's working, while like kind of like bridging the gap of like what his next steps were. Like he's on this heart transplant list just as a backup plan. And then a week before graduation, he comes in just booming that he's like, they took me off the list because my ejection fraction is up, my cholesterol's down, my blood pressure's better managed. I can't remember how much weight loss that he had, but he had a significant amount of weight loss. And he's like, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. And my always feedback to patients is like, they always give us so much credit. And I'm like, we're just here to educate you. And it's the patients themselves that take the education and apply it to their lifestyle. And I always tell them, even if you do 10% of what I tell you, you're going to reap 10% of those benefits. The more that you do, you're going to see the results over time.
Were you able to check in with Greg as he was working on the site, and building and remodeling the kitchen area?
Yeah, so in my old space, there was floor to ceiling windows that connected the clinic, the West Bend clinic, to the hospital. And so like all the passerbyers would always see me every Thursday, Friday. Those are my cooking days. And so the first Thursday that he worked, he made sure that like there's no patients in the classroom, and he knocked on my door while I was chopping some vegetables. And I look up and I'm like, "Are you working here?" Because he had his hard hat on, and he goes, "Yup." And guess what? And I was like, "Oh my goodness, you're building my kitchen, aren't you?" So it was amazing. Like it was just this moment of, I can't believe it, because we were talking about Freidert's, starting the build out process, me chit chatting with him about the whole process and what to do. And then the following year, the fact that he's the one building my kitchen, he goes, "Yep, I'm putting in your counter right now, actually." So it was a lot of fun. And it was kind of nice too, because he gave me little inside tidbits of what the space would look like too.
One thing I wonder about the cooking, because you talked about cooking these meals. I mean, you could sit down with a list of healthy foods, and a lot of people already know what the healthy foods are. It's not that they don't know what they are. It's that we just don't eat them because they don't taste as good. Maybe we think as, or willpower, whatever it is. Why is it so important to actually do the cooking in front of them? What is it that you're teaching them? What is it you're showing them that is so beneficial?
Yeah, so I always tell people that I can talk about nutrition until I'm blue in the face. And, some people can take that information and apply it at home right away. And then, most people, let's be honest, when you hear you got to watch your salt intake, your fat intake, your added sugar, you take away the big three flavors that we're all used to having. And, it's that misconception that, anything that tastes good isn't healthy for me. So having this program that allows for weekly cooking demonstrations helps them show how to walk the talk of living that cardiac friendly eating plan. So yeah, I don't have any salt anywhere in my pantry space. I don't have any refined sugar. And so each week there's a different theme. And we just focus on the theme. And I'm like, this flavor of this recipe is gonna come a lot from the garlic and onion, but we're also gonna use crushed red pepper flakes.
So it's all the spices and other things, the non-salt spices and things like that you can give flavor to foods. That's a big key to making it attractive and delicious.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then the fact that they get to taste test. So they not only see me cook it, and they will see it from start to finish. Maybe there'll be a little bit of like prep work done beforehand, but that's another barrier, is that we perceive that healthy cooking is so time and labor intensive. So they see me use tips and tricks. They see me prep ahead, but for the most part, you see it from start to finish. And then you get to taste test the end product, and you see the recipe, you see there's no salt. We talk about the flavors, whether or not it's the garlic and onion or the oregano or crushed red pepper, all the possibilities of, spices, acid profiles, etc. And then they get to taste test it. And I don't expect everybody to like everything that I make, but when they get to taste test, we then get to sit back and we get to talk about the texture of the food, the flavor of the food. Okay, what do your taste buds pick up on? Do you need more garlic? Does this recipe just need a little bit more black pepper? And then the patients themselves get to talk about the recipe and what they also do at home to a similar dish. So it really does help impact sustainable nutrition change.
Well, and I think half of it is, just for regular people like who aren't in this program, it's hard enough to meal plan. And so sometimes those quicker meals,
Amen,
but the
sister.
problem is that those quicker meals, whatever it is, are traditionally packed with sodium, packed with other stuff.
Frozen foods that are high in sodium.
But even like in the story, in Sam's story, Sarah, I saw you were talking with Sam about something, and I saw behind you in your pantry all those canned beans. And I know beans are healthy. People see those sometimes and think, oh, gross, I'm just going to pour them in a bowl and eat them. No, there's so many things you can do with beans, and they take on whatever flavors you want to mix with them. So whether, like you said, it's the garlic or the onions. But I think, kind of what you're saying, right, is just like it's just a shift in a mindset that this is attainable, and it's not just something that's out there for healthy eaters per se.
Correct. Yes. So it is the eating plan that we educate is the primary plant-based eating plan, because that is what science shows, has that the greatest impact on our overall health, but specifically cardiac health. So when we think about the standard, Wisconsinite eating plan, it's a little bit of the meat and potatoes, a little higher in the dairy, right? Not always the picture perfect heart healthy.
So you're not teaching
really,
keto.
yes, correct. Yep. So it's taking a different look at, what patients are used to eating, including those beans. And if any of my patients see this, they're going to laugh that I'm talking about the legumes, because it is always a trending topic. So not only do we get to learn how to, flavor our foods that meet our health goals, but we also get to try new foods as well. Because as you were saying, some people see a can of beans and they're like, I don't know about that. Versus in cooking school, I make it a point to try to showcase multiple ways about how to have black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, whether or not we're making a homemade hummus that we use on a turkey wrap spread, or we're making a black bean and corn salsa, or we're even just making a very flavorful Cajun, bean and rice mixture. So that helps too, because you take a food item that we don't really know how to utilize or make flavorful, and we showcase how to make it a variety of dishes that, that at least one of them, hopefully you can be like, I could do that at home. I could maybe add beans to my, my brown rice on taco nights or something like that.
See, I have my wife loves making Mediterranean dishes, and they're fantastic, and they're very heart healthy and all of these sorts of things, which is great. My problem is following that up with a bag of potato chips. That's where I probably go wrong.
Just hit the brakes.
Until then, all right. I hope I never have to be in your kitchen, because I hope I'm never there. But we are so grateful that you have come to our studio and been here, been a part of Open Record today. Thank you for your time, and enjoy your new kitchen space at Freighter West Bend.
Thank you so much.
Sarah Bedford, Freighter West Bend. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to go off the record. And it is time for us to go off the record. This is the part of the podcast where we get a little more casual, have a little fun by answering a question for which we have not prepared. Sarah Bedford has graciously offered to stick around and help answer this one with us. But with the question is our other Sarah here, Sarah Smith. What do you have?
Another victim for the question. I'm just kidding, Sarah. Okay. This question is, what popular song do you hate that everyone else loves? That when it comes on the radio, or you hear it at a wedding, or that people sing along and you're just like, please stop. I'll start while you guys think a little bit.
Okay.
I'll tell you that I hate the song Piano Man.
Really?
What?
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
No, I know.
Okay.
Dislike. I think I hate it because it's always the sing-along song at weddings. Ugh. Like, make it stop.
So you just hate it because it's overplayed and overdone.
Whatever.
Or
I just don't really
you
like the
actually
song.
hate the tune.
I kind of do, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
I also don't like Rod Stewart. so
Wow.
anything Rod Stewart is a no-go in my book.
okay.
But also, funny enough, I Googled worst songs or most annoying songs, and there was a whole article. But unfortunately, some of these songs I actually like. Let's see. We Built This City by Starship.
Oh, okay.
That's not
okay,
annoying,
No,
is it?
hang on. Before you go on.
Okay.
That song alone, my wife hates that one
Hates
so
it.
much.
Wow.
Now, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where KG95, rock radio station, their theme song for them was We Built This City on rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
So they had a whole thing. So I heard that endlessly growing up. My wife hates it so much, though, that that her boys and I will sometimes sing it to her just to make her
Just to
cover
cringe,
her head.
yeah.
Right. So.
Or like One Week by the Bare Naked Ladies. I also enjoy that song. But I'm sure I'm in a minority here. Okay, Brian, what song do you hate that everyone loves?
That's a great question. I mean, you go to the wedding thing, and this isn't necessarily so much a song, it's the electric slide.
Yeah, that gets vetoed a lot. I feel like at a lot of weddings.
And now I will say this: if I was a DJ, I would play the electric slide when no one is on the floor, because immediately 50 people will come to the dance floor.
Every
I will not be one of them.
47-year-old to 55-year-old
I will
woman,
not be
probably a
one of
little older,
But,
really loves it.
But in terms of songs that everybody likes that I'm not a big fan of, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not one of those people who's like, everybody loves Taylor Swift, and I don't. She's got some catchy tunes. I'm not a Swiftie, but I don't object to them. I don't know. I don't know. I got to think about that one.
I'll play contrarian. I'm a Swiftie. I like all the wedding
Yeah.
songs.
Oh, Sam.
My wife
Chicken
knows.
dance?
I'll go dance.
Okay.
Doesn't
I
matter.
dance
I
at
know
weddings.
my
Okay.
role.
But electric slide is when
I know
and
my
I
role.
am there to keep the dance floor busy.
Sure. Okay.
All of that being
I
said,
respect that.
all of that being said, jump around is my pick.
Wow.
As somebody who did not go to Madison,
Me neither.
I went to
Wow.
Minnesota, so maybe
Okay.
there's a little bit of that
Okay, a
there.
little bit
but
of- all right.
I just think, like, do we need to play it at Lambeau? Do we need to play it at Fiserv Forum? Like, it's its
Okay.
own thing.
All right. That's
And
That's
to,
a hot
to be
take.
honest, it's
That
it's a
really
lot of
is.
jumping. Like, let's just
well, okay.
You know,
but
it's
that
been nice
song-
having you for the last.
Yeah, that's mine. But also, like, it's one of those where you start to jump and then you're like, wow, there are a lot of jump arounds. This is a long chorus. And then I'm like, my calves are going to blow up.
Actually,
so I have to, so then I
staying
just
with
stand.
all of jump around is probably good for the heart.
Yeah.
healthy side of the
Yes,
program,
yes,
right?
get
I
that
mean,
heart rate up.
That one takes some
quick
effort.
asterisk. I do respect the Camp Randall tradition.
Okay, that's
I think
fair.
it's great.
But you're right. Outside of
I don't
that,
know
you're
if
like,
that's a save.
but why? I mean,
I don't know if it is either.
just
I'm
stand
just
by it. Stand by
stating
it,
for
Sam.
the record,
all right.
off the record.
I like it. Okay,
Sarah,
Sarah.
what comes to your mind?
I honestly, I don't know if I have one that I just like always skip and avoid. I just depends on my mood and what station I'm listening to.
That's fair.
So if I want to be upbeat and it's a little too slow of a radio station, that's probably why I change it. But other than that, I pretty much listen. I listen to whatever. And you can ask my my 10-year-old bonus kid. I do dance, car jam to literally whatever, and I'll
Yep.
make up lyrics if I don't know what it is.
If you're at a wedding and everyone's singing along to a song, you don't know the words.
Yeah.
Or at a concert, you say watermelon.
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 Looks like you know the words because you're just watermelon.
seriously?
Watermelon. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it looks like you know the lyrics.
Why do you both know this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's because it's a useful.
Yeah, because it's that thing that lives up here rent free.
I just kind of like, look at everybody else's lips and try to mimic.
So, but you talked about being the guy at the wedding who will like. I
yeah.
know that I'm there to
Yeah,
be
for
on the
sure.
dance floor. I am someone who, if we're out with a group of people and it's all ladies on the dance floor, I'll be the one guy. I like to dance. It's just I don't necessarily like the line dance that everyone does kind
Yeah.
of thing. But I'll get out there and dance to most anything. What I won't do anymore is there's always a guy at a wedding who thinks it's time to take the tie off and turn the tie into a prop. And when the tie becomes a prop,
Or ties it around his
cut
head.
him off. That
Also,
guy
I
gets
hate
cut
dance
off.
Did that
circles.
for my wedding last year. Did that for my wedding last year.
Oh God.
Ended the wedding with Piano Man.
No.
Did you
Oh, no.
wait?
Well,
did
no,
you-
actually, no, we
Did you
didn't.
put
Oh.
the tie around your head like Rambo? Did you do that at any point?
I'm gonna apologize
You
to
did,
your
didn't
wife.
you?
For a brief moment. It was my wedding. I can
I do what I want. I
The
paid
groom-
for it.
The groom can do anything, and I will
Yeah.
not judge that.
There's a
It's
photo
the
there.
groom's men.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a photo.
Oh my
You know
gosh.
Rambo?
Yeah. But we have my friend group is kind of hitting that part of our lives in stride. We've got half of us
Your
married.
young puppies.
Another
Yeah.
one's coming. There's one of my friends who every time Mr. Brightside comes on, he takes his shirt off to the point in that song, to the point where we're like, oh, it's on. It
Okay,
doesn't
yeah.
matter if it's 8:00, Ben. Are you coming out? Let's see it. So
That's
Sarah,
hilarious.
are you are you wedding dance floor person? Are you out there kicking, or are you on the sideline
I-
observing, waiting until it's crowded?
I think it depends on the type of wedding that it is. But I am like my family, even the kid, we're a sucker for the Cupid shuffle. That's like
Oh,
our
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sarah, again, thank you for being on Open Record. We really appreciate it, and again, enjoy that new kitchen as part of the intensive cardiac rehab program at Freighter West Bend.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll wrap things up when we come right back. As we come back, Sarah's still laughing about.
I'm just laughing because Sam was like, I tied the tie. I did the dance circle. We
did
You know
played
what?
piano
And
man.
then when I said the thing about the Rambo thing, he's like, I did that too. You know what though? I'll tell you what. This is the worst. Have you ever? We only have a minute, but have you ever like said something about a gift before you opened it? Like, well, that would be the only thing I wouldn't like, and then it's that thing.
Oh shoot.
I still remember I was like 15, 16 years old, and somebody said they were worried about the gift they got me, and I said, as long as it's not something like tube socks. And it was tube socks, but it was St. Louis Cardinals tube socks. I meant
that's a
like
little
a
different.
pack of
Totally
white
redeemed
socks.
themselves.
I did it again recently where I said something about how much I'm not a fan of gummy candies, like gummy worms and things like that. And right before someone opened a gift where they got a bunch of different gummy candies. And so
Siri, return the
Careful
gummy
what
candy
you
gift
say.
I got
Yeah,
Brian.
right. Anyway, if you have a topic you would like us to discuss on Open Record or an issue you think we should investigate for Fox 6 News, please send us an email to fox6investigators@fox.com. As always, thank you to the people who make this podcast possible, Sarah, Sam, and of course, our editor, Dave Machuda, who is also manning the video switcher this week, and of course, our chief photographer, who usually manages the video switcher, Kale Zimney. With that, I'm Brian Polson. We'll be back next week.